this piece, I want to talk about the budget, Labour's first budget. Oh, my word. It feels like it's been coming forever. It's been, and they built it up to be this big fright night. Rachel Reeve and Keir Starmer have been trying to scare us to death, and rightly so. We knew it was going to hurt, and they've been saying and building that expectation up until eventually on the 30th of October, Rachel Reeve actually disclosed how painful it was going to be. And of course, as a landlord, we're going, okay, £40 billion worth of tax that they've got to find. How much of that burden is going to get picked up by landlords? Because do you know what? We are so used to be taking a kick in since 2016. It feels like every single year, let's give landlords yet another kick in and see how much more money we can squeeze out of them, how much pain they're prepared to take. And so we're almost expecting landlords to be hit as a soft target yet again. Now, I don't know about you, and by all means, put some comments down below the video. I'd be really interested in your overall perception of it. Mine, again, if I put my landlord hat on, I feel like we've got away with it. Not entirely, of course, we're not going to get away scot-free. There's some pain. And you can see on my bullet points, second home stamp duty is the biggest one, which I'll come to in a second. But that aside, I feel that actually we've got away fairly lightly. And if you think about that £40 billion as a cake, how much of landlords had to contribute to that £40 billion? It's 1 to 2% of a £40 billion invoice. So relatively speaking, I think it could have been a lot worse. I think that's my summation of it. But let's get into it. And what I've done, because I don't think we've been hit that hard, I've expanded it on in terms of what also are the Labour government's major manifesto promises that impact on landlords. So I've sort of blended two things here. And so we're going to start with renters reform. Oh my God. Does this feel like it's been around forever? It feels to me like it should already be enacted. It's already, the rules have already changed, and they haven't. Look, the Tories were going to run with it and would have run with it if they hadn't been kicked out of town. But Angela Rayner, she's picked that ball up, hasn't she? And she has said, right, I'm going to get it over the line. They debated it in Parliament again in the last week or so. Doesn't seem like it's not seen as contentious from a House of Commons point. God, I nearly forgot. House of Commons point of view. So it looks like it'll go through fairly smoothly. So for those of you that have been living under a stone, what does it mean? Or a quick reminder. Look, right now, if we want to evict a tenant within certain parameters, i.e. they're not tied into a tenancy agreement, if it's come to an end, you can give them 2 months' notice. You do not need to give an explanation. The tenants do not have to be at fault, but the no fault rule is being removed. So as a landlord, that dilutes some of our control, but the main controls and the main reasons that we're going to kick a tenant out is not for no reason whatsoever. Yes, I get that sometimes there are reasons that you want to try and move a tenant on, but the big chunky reasons, i.e. rent arrears, their antisocial behavior, they're not looking after the property. Those major issues are still there. If you want to sell the property, you can still have the tenant evicted. So, those powers as a landlord are still intact, but the no fault is going. Let's get used to it. Now, look at the next one. EPC ratings. Yes, they are back. Now, the Tories tried to push this through, and I think eventually they got cold feet. They listened to the whispers of the lobbyists, and they'd kicked it into the long grass. But Labour, again, they've picked up and they're going to say, no, we're going to push this one through. It's a real challenge for them. I'm going to explain in a minute why I think the Tories dropped it. Because, look, what is this new regime, this new ruling policy that Labour are trying to bring in? Well, we all know about EPC ratings. They've been around long enough. But the rule is that by 2030, now the Tories wanted it, a soft line in the sand was 2025, which was because of its imminence, which I think is why they dumped it, and then a hard line in the sand at 2028. So Labour, they've given us another 2 years. However, this is the size of the problem. 4.5 million rental properties right now in 2024 do not meet those targets. So they're at D or lower. That's a massive, massive effort on landlords' parts to collectively drag our Victorian terrace houses into the 21st century and make them energy efficient. It's a massive task. And so what are we going to do about it as landlords? Do we look, it's 6 years away, you're shouting to me, Richard, I've got bigger fish to fry. I've got bigger things to worry about. And I sort of get it, but I want to challenge you on this a little bit because lenders are incentivizing you as landlords to drag that rating up to a C because they'll offer you better deals. So if for no other reason than they're dangling a little bit of a carrot, and I'd hope that carrot gets bigger because there are savings to be had, but I think they could be bigger from lenders. And I guess as time goes on, my view is that the government may lean on the lenders to offer bigger incentives if landlords are not seen to be heading in that direction. But here's the thing. Someone far cleverer than I did the maths on what it would cost to drag an average rental property from a D rating to a C. And the figure was over £9,000. So I totally get that as a landlord, you're thinking, 9,000 quid, I'm going to sell up because if you've got a mortgage on that property, then your profits, I would say, let's say for conversation's sake, your profits are £2,000 a year. That's 4.5 years worth of profits. So in very simple terms, why on earth would you may as well sell up now and move on and get a different property or do whatever. But here's the thing. I want to challenge you. I want you to think not in terms of this £9,000 as an expense, but as an investment. Now, bear with me. You see it as an investment for a number of reasons. One, because it will increase the value of your asset. Two, I genuinely believe that you will be able to put the rent up. Three, as I said earlier, mortgage lenders will offer you cheaper deals. So all in all, there's lots of ways that can incentivize you to consider it as an investment. The final thing is that lenders are also offering you additional further advances on your mortgage that you can only access, one, at preferential rates, and two, if you can prove it's for energy efficiency purposes, i.e. to bring the rating up. So the reason I say see it as an investment is not from just a fanciful, let's just rebadge it point of view, but from I'm an accountant. So if you see it as from an accounting perspective and see it as a capital spend, not a revenue spend, then if you're spending 9,000 quid and you've got that property for the next 20 years, then that's about £40 a month that it's costing you because you've added it to your mortgage. And as I said, it's 40 quid a month. But if you can actually put your rents up a little bit more and a little bit quicker, and you can get cheaper mortgage interest rates, that offsets the 40 quid. Then actually, is it 30 quid? Is it 20 quid a month? And all of a sudden, you're seeing the numbers differently, and it might see your decision about whether you invest in your assets or not. So I'm hoping that's going to give you just a different perspective on EPCs. Right, here's the one that really sticks in everyone's thought. Second home stamp duty. I get the initial reaction as it was for me when I saw it. It was a little bit of a shock, I got to say, from 3% to 5% additional tax. So that's a big extra chunk of money to pay over to HMRC, and I get that. It is, if I'm playing devil's advocate, it brings us in line with Wales and Scotland. Wales are about 4%, Scotland around 6%. So if we're now going to be paying 5%, we're in line with that. Does that make it any more palatable? No, it doesn't. I totally agree with you on that point. However, let's just rewind to 2016. Back in 2016, there was a time at probably the beginning of that year There was no additional stamp duty whatsoever. And all of a sudden, out of left field came this new 3% additional tax. And yes, we threw our hands in the air. Yes, we bellyached about it down the pub. But you know what? We adapted. We got on with it. We got used to it. We started negotiating stronger discounts to build it in. We did our pricing a bit more keener, and we said, does it still work if there's a higher cost? And we made our decisions on that. And you know what? I think us resilient landlords will do it exactly the same. Now it's gone to 5%. Now, I also want to just give you some headlines of how you might be able to sidestep this 5% all in all. So you might want to get your pen and paper out and jot these down. I'm not going to go into any detail whatsoever, so you'll have to Google it, get your education elsewhere on these other ways, mechanisms, strategies for making money out of property that will sidestep the 5% stamp duty. So this isn't exhaustive, but it gives you a flavor. Rent to rent. Have you heard of it? It's been around for quite a few years now. So rather than purchasing the property and incurring that stamp duty, you rent the property off someone else, come to an agreement, and then you make your money that way. Commercial to resi. It's been growing in popularity for a few years now. And certainly with permitted development rights, where councils are allowing you to get hold of a commercial property and convert it to resi with less restrictions, and that doesn't come with the same stamp duty bill. Excuse me. Uninhabitable properties. Did you know that they don't come with the same stamp duty bill? So if you're buying a property and it is classed as uninhabitable, look up what that means separately to this. But if you can demonstrate that it is, then it doesn't come with that same stamp duty bill. Now, we're getting inquiries, and I suspect they might get more after this 5% stamp duty is coming, where if you are buying properties from another landlord, let's say, and in the past you bought them as an individual, you bought the actual property, have you considered, or would the landlord consider, selling the actual limited company that the property is sat in? So you're buying the company, not the property, because guess what? From a stamp duty point of view, the property is not being sold or purchased. It's the shares that are changing hands. So if look, it's a complex subject. And by the way, if you look back on some of I didn't check when I did it, but a few months ago, earlier this year, I did an educational topic on buying limited companies that hold properties rather than the properties themselves. So if you want to educate yourself a bit more, just look back on previous updates, or email me if you want me to ping it out, and I can send you that particular piece of content. Look, back to the script. So if you buy the limited company, not the property, that does sidestep the stamp duty costs. So I think over time we'll see more buyers looking at that. And I know, and therefore I'll see, it is complex, and lenders are a little hesitant out there, but I could see lenders seeing this as getting more commonplace as time goes on. So that's another way around it. Now, lease purchase options. Again, it's quite a bit of a dark art and a little bit more complex, using option agreements. But there's plenty of property education companies out there offering one-day courses on lease purchase options. So if you're interested in that, look it up, Google it, or again, ask me for recommendations, and I can point you to some recommended fantastic educators who will talk to you about lease purchase options. But again, that sidesteps the stamp duty, and there's other benefits as well. And finally, what about flips? There's always been landlords that actually don't want to hold properties. They want their focus and their passion is actually to develop properties, to renovate them, and then take the money out, take the profit, and move on to the next one. Well, that's from a HMRC point of view, you're trading in properties, you're not investing, and therefore it doesn't come under the same taxes and stamp duty that you and I have if we're holding and returning properties. Look, it's not exhaustive. There's a few examples. I hope it's given you some cause for encouragement and not to be totally disheartened about that second home stamp duty. Finally, I put national insurance on here, only literally just to say, well, if landlords are not picking up this £40 billion tax bill, who is footing the bill? Well, actually, national insurance, that hike in NI contributions accounts for something like 3/4 of that £40 billion. So it's about 30 billion is being raised by increasing national insurance. So if you are a landlord that happens to be that one, you know, that in that 1% bracket that actually got such a large property related business that you employ staff, then yeah, look, you are getting more of a kick in. It is going to hurt you more than the rest of the landlords that probably don't employ staff. So very unlucky, but that's the way it is, and that hopefully covers that off. Now, if anyone wants to have a chat with the team about anything I've discussed here, about some of those strategies, because a lot of those strategies I've talked about still require finance, commercial to resi, the flips, buy-in, SPVs, for example, all those still require a different form of mortgage finance, which we do. And if you don't have a fantastic broker that you rely on, please just book some time in. There's a link at the end of this piece, and have a chat with the team about how we could put the finance in place for your next project.